understand, Eric, I love working with accountants because, first of all, when we talk about our processes and the work that we do, they appreciate the fact that I'm doing and my team are doing the heavy lifting for them because they don't have time. So a lot of these professionals, it's not just billable hours, it's that the tax system itself has created such complexity for the individual taxpayer that the accountant ends up being the messenger. And they don't really want to be the messenger. Sometimes they do want to be that person that sits on the right side of the table.
At MBA Chartered Professional Accountants, we have 3 core beliefs. 1, we believe that business owners are the most important people on the planet. 2, we believe that the traditional accounting firm business model is flawed and fails to serve you. And 3, we believe the MBA Way gives you what you truly want and deserve, resources and advice that helps you grow your business and your life. This is the MBA Way podcast. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the MBA Way podcast. I'm your host, Eric Solbakken, and today on the podcast, we have Sandy Pollack. Now, Sandy's got so many letters behind her names, I think she wins. I used to say that when I was going through school. I thought, you know what, I was going to get my CA designation, then I was going to get my lawyer designation. Then I thought, wait a second, the person who dies with the most letters behind their names wins. I think Sandy's got that one nailed. You should see the list here. But the thing that I really wanted to talk to you about, she's a certified financial planner, CLU, TEP, FEA, MFA-P. Don't know what that is, but we're going to ask her about it. The wonderful thing that I wanted to talk about in this podcast is the book that she wrote and I read and I thought was absolutely fantastic. It's called Don't Leave a Mess. And it's how to disaster-proof your family legacy. Sandy and I are going to get into that conversation. So without further ado, Sandy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Eric. It is a pleasure being here today.
So don't leave a mess. You know, you and I having estate planning backgrounds, dealing with financial planning, we understand how much of a mess business owners can leave for the next generation when someone leaves the planet, right? So one of the first questions I ever asked someone when they come in and I start working with them as a client, back when I had an accounting firm, I said, how are you going to exit your business? And they're like, well, why are you asking me that? I just started it. I said, well, you're going to exit it and you're going to exit the world because you're either going to sell it, you're going to transfer it to the kids, or you're going to die. And so let's talk about with the end in mind. And it seems to me with this book that you wrote, it's something with the end in mind. And so what spurred you on to write the book?
Well, to be very frank, what spurred me was after 30 years of serving family business enterprise and high net worth individuals, I realized that there's a whole sea. It's a vast ocean of confusion and complexity, and that building one's wealth and managing one's wealth are not the same thing. And if you talk to any entrepreneur who starts with 0 or if maybe even a negative, he had a journey and he had trials and tribulations, and some people call it failures, but I always say you're either on the winning team or the learning team because they always learn from things that don't work. And what I found was that when they finally reached a point in their lives where they had a significant amount of wealth, there were more headaches, more corporations, more financial statements, more tax issues, more tax complexities from a legal standpoint. And so they would put it to the back of their desk and would much rather deal with their business or go play golf or go hiking. And yet it was a responsibility that they had. And more often than not, in the planning conversations that I would have with successful business owners, they would say, Sandy, here are my goals: to take care of my family first. If I owe anybody money, to make sure that they get paid, right? Take care of my employees, and whatever is left, take care of the government, pay my taxes. And that was how they lived their lives. And I would say, well, that is a really great way to look at life. It shows me that you love your family and you're working hard to provide for them. Secondly, you're a person of honor and dignity because you want to make sure that if you owe anybody anything, that gets cleared before you go. And yes, you really care about your employees and you're supplying jobs and supporting many families. Doesn't matter whether you have 3 employees or 300, you have to multiply that because they go to the grocery store and they buy groceries and they buy clothes, and that creates employment, which generates a strong economy. And who likes to pay taxes? But the fact of the matter is that when you walk out of life, and we're 100% certain that you will, we just can't give you the exact date or time or how, we can assure you that how it works is the exact reverse. And the government says, pay us our taxes first. And then the people that owe you money, or that you owe money to, say, oh, okay, we're second in line after the tax man. And then the last people in line are usually your loved ones. And is that really what you want to do? And so I wrote this book because we get so caught up in the minutiae of details and tax strategies and tactics and tools that we forget about what is it that we really want and why, and how can we help our clients navigate that somewhat. You could call it a ceiling of complexity if you want, but in a way that's a lot more manageable, that is pleasant, that isn't fearful. And it's really talking about what you want to see happen from a place of aspiration instead of a place of desperation. And that's why I wrote the book, is I wanted something that was easy to understand, that was straight from the heart as well as the hip, without getting into the whole complexities and legal and accounting and financial jargon that most professionals get into.
So speaking of that, I want to really dive into your letters here. Okay, so just so the reader and the listener and the watcher and the listener understand that you do understand what you're talking about here. So CFP,
Certified Financial Planner,
CLU,
Chartered Life Underwriter,
TEP,
Trust and Estate Practitioner,
FEA,
Family Enterprise Advisor,
MFA-P.
Oh, Master in Financial Advising with Philanthropy, Charitable Giving.
That is, you win. You got so many letters. There's so many letters behind your name. Like, so you understand this. Like, I was the president of the Victoria Estate Planning Council, so I understand the TEP and how important it is around. And what we're talking about here is estates and not leaving a mess to your family and your loved ones. And, you know, I can speak from experience that a lot of people they're so focused on, okay, let's minimize the taxes, minimize the taxes, minimize the taxes. Okay, that's great. But have you simplified when you exit so that your loved ones are not left with a bloody mess? And I've been an executor for multiple clients in the past, and the ones that had everything dialed in, all the things that I read in your book, like leaving a list, having the conversation before you go, letting the family understand what your intentions are, having it all dialed in, makes it so much easier. And that's the one thing I loved about your book, is that it wasn't going into the details and the minutiae of all the latest tax strategies and tips, because really they keep changing. But this book is more timeless. It's about how you structure your thinking around your exit, as having the conversation with the family members around the exit. So I was wondering if you could talk a little more specifically around that.
So why don't we dial it back just a little bit, Eric, and talk about why people don't have those conversations?
Go for it.
Why don't we have conversations about our planning? Quite often, it is because of how we ourselves look at money and wealth, how we were brought up. And we call this money scripts. And we all have money scripts, whether we were born with money or without money. Did our parents talk about money at the kitchen table? Did they not talk about money or investments? Was it a taboo subject? And more often than not, you have a lot of people that have a discomfort about talking about money and financial because they're fearful of, if they bring this up, does it look like they're a show off? Are they concerned that their kids will be bums and ruin their incentive to work, right? And to earn an income, and all these myths around money and wealth, when truly, if you look at money and dig down into why it's important to each individual Canadian, American, European, it's a little deeper than that. And it's about values. And I think that we don't spend enough time having conversations about values, because once we have security, which is food on the table and a roof on our head, a roof over our heads, and we're taking care of our family, what really is important about money? And when we have those deeper conversations, they realize that it's not something to be fearful of. It's actually something really good, because wealth can soften the corners of life. It can soften those edges, those rough edges, but it can do so much more. It can help your children with an education, or help your children pursue a passion that they aspire to, or give your children the opportunity to live with purpose. And I think that that is really more of the conversation than, do I need insurance? Which, by the way, we deal with life insurance for our clients, and we're able to implement some very interesting plans to provide liquidity at a discount to pay taxes. But let's park that for a moment. And if you don't have a why as to what is the purpose of your wealth, I think that there's no point in even doing a plan. And going back to all those letters, why do I have so many letters? It's because I am very curious and I'm an avid reader. And it's not that myself or any of our team members are the smartest people in the world. I think we're the most curious. I think we're the most alert. We're very resourceful if we don't have the right answers, and we're also responsive. And I think that really it's about opening up a conversation that at first might feel uncomfortable, and realizing it goes from discomfort to aspirational and purposeful.
So this is one of the themes in your book is about a values-based planning approach. It's talking about and having the conversation with your heirs on exactly the purpose, the why behind the wealth, and what you want to see happen going forward. And you find that people don't have that conversation because you said of the, shall we say, the stigma around money and the rest of it. Do you think there's also a huge issue around people not wanting to talk about them leaving the planet? People have a big issue about talking about their own death. And I found that for when I was in public practice, because I was in there for, we're coming up on quite a few years now. It's 36 years will be this year is when I first started. People don't want to talk about their death. They don't want to talk about that, but it's a fact of life. It's like one of those base realities that's like, look, we got to talk about your estate planning, because if you don't, you are going to leave a mess for your family.
That's a myth. And I go through, why is it? I think I have 9 reasons why people don't like to talk about it. One is, and this is a real fear, is that if I don't talk about death, it won't happen to me. That's myth number 1. Right?
Oh yeah. So the myths. Okay. So we're talking about the myths around
planning.
The reasons why people don't want to talk about death is because of these myths. And the first one is if I don't talk about it, then it won't happen. But if I talk about it, then it's going to happen tomorrow.
That
makes sense. I can get that. Yeah.
You get that? It's
totally. Because it's like the law of attraction. Well, if you think about it, it's going to show up. So I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
And this is a bona fide, if I talk about, guess what? Whether you talk about it or not, and that's the only thing I guarantee, is it will happen. 100%. Can't guarantee dividends, can't guarantee interest rates, inflation, tax. That's always moving and changing. But death is 100% certain. So that means
taxes, death and taxes, death and taxes.
Correct. But I can't tell you how much taxes, because that's a moving target. That seems to be always going north. But I will say this, is that once you are able to, and I think it takes a little bit of understanding that life is, that we are, this whole theory of Buddhism, which talks about the impermanence of life, right? Like you die and then you go in a box and decompose and become something else, just like a flower. And once we're able to wrap our arms around it, we can think about it with a little more ease, because there is that death over there and then there's death over here. Oh my God, you have cancer and you have 3 months to live. That's a different kind of scramble. But if we know that it's there and we can just somehow or another wrap our arms around it to say, that's okay. Now, how can I make the time that I am alive, make that intentional, make that purposeful? And how do I do that? And another fear, they don't want to talk about it, is quite often people do not like to acknowledge what they've built. The number of times that we have walked our clients through their structure and what they're worth, and they're worth 100 million, and they go, no, that's not me. Let's not talk about that. And they're, no, I didn't say that's you. You are you, Eric. You're right in front of me. You're a human being, breathing, walking, living. But there's this thing called wealth that you own. So it's not you. You have built it. Now, what are you going to do with it? It's just like when you own your house and all of a sudden you have to repaint or you want to sell it or there's a flood and you have to fix it. Well, this is one of those things that you own. Now, what do you intend to do with it? And how do you intend to manage it in a thoughtful, intentional way? And once they realize that it's not them, right? Because they don't want to. They say, oh no, I'm still that simple person. I'm driving my used car that's 6 years old or 8 years old. So that 100 million is not me. No, I didn't say that. I say you own that. Just like you own that beat up car. Don't think you're fooling anybody. You have 3 vacation homes. But the fact of the matter is how are you going to unravel that in terms of how you want it to serve you during your lifetime for your own well-being and your own financial independence? As well as if there's anything left over, how do you want to manage that in an intentional way? Because the last thing you want is to have children that feel like lottery winners, because we all know the stats on lottery winners. When they come into sudden wealth within a period of, I don't know if it's 2 to 5 years, that it's all dissipated and gone to zero. Well, that's happened as well with inheritances. They are lottery winners if they're not prepared. So our industry is preparing the wealth. Let's prepare, but we're not preparing the children or the grandchildren or the heirs. And I think that's an important part in this book as well, is to realize that it's not just preparing the money, okay, not preparing what you've built, but it's also having conversations so that your children have a connection between what you've built, the valuables, and the values that have been part of your journey to build what this thing is or things.
And so this ties directly in. Look at me, I'm skipping over my words here. Sorry. Chapter 1 is the price of silence. And this is one of the things that you're hitting on right away, is like the price of not talking to your family and having them understand the wealth that they currently have and the reason why we're doing it and the purpose behind it is, if you don't do that, one of the prices of that silence is they're going to inherit a whole bunch of money. It'll be like a lottery win. And we know what that happens. It turns into a mess, right? And interesting here, I give you a thought on this one. I find that, north of the border, Canadians, very humble when it comes to talking about value and money and growing wealth. When we go south of the border, our American friends, they're good with it, man. It's like this, let's go, build more money, make more wealth. And they're, that, you and I are also in Strategic Coach together, and you'll have the Canadian entrepreneurs and then you have the American entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs there. But mind you, we're in a different group. Like with the entrepreneurs that are Strategic Coach, we're okay with talking about wealth and creating more value in the world. But just generally north of the border, more humble, don't talk about wealth, but that's to our detriment. This is what you're saying. It's to the detriment about not talking about it, having your kids understand it, and understanding the why causes a problem. But it's funny because in Canada, I think people hold it as a badge of honor that we're humble and we don't talk about it, but it actually harms us.
And when I say talk about it, Eric, I don't mean, okay, I'm worth 100 million, kids, just so you know. That's not what I mean by talking about it. What I mean is sharing the bigger strokes of your planning. To say, look, I want to just share with you a little bit about, we're doing our estate plan and we're setting it up in a certain way. And the reason why we're setting it up is because we want to ensure family harmony, and there's going to be significant taxes, and we want to encourage you to use professionals to help guide you and not do it yourself. When you have nothing, you can do it yourself, but because it's complex. And having those kind of conversations and gradually feeding your family members with thoughts, thinking tools, sharing snippets of stories. I bought this building or I built this building and we never really wanted to sell it because we realized that once it paid off, it would generate some income that would provide us our vacations. And that's how we took our family vacations, right? So all of a sudden, you're not giving what the value of the business is, the accumulated depreciation and all the other formulas that go in, but you're really kind of giving them a connection between what was being built and the stories and values behind it. And that's why communication is so key. It's just that, we're not taught communication. We're not taught in university and high school. And so more often than not, you might need a facilitator to help lower the temperature in the room, lower the anxiety in the room, so that it's not about throwing financial statements at your family members, but it's more about talking in an aspirational way about what's great about this family, what brings it together, and how can we make sure that those values and traditions carry on, knowing that we've also got a life jacket that's going to ensure that for many generations or one generation. And having conversations, family meetings, and it can even be at the dinner table, just little stories. It's unbelievable how communication, I've yet to find any of my clients who say, Sandy, we talk too much, we communicate too much. That's our biggest problem. 9.9 times out of 10, they look at me and they say, hey, give me some ideas of how I can bring this subject up. Marriage contracts, prenups, cohaps. How can I bring this up in a sensitive way so that they understand that it's mandatory without having to do it the day before they propose or the day before they decide they're going to get married? And this is what the whole idea, and I think I have a chapter in there about how to choose your professionals, is about collaboration and having, whoever your professional advisory team is made up of, to ensure that they are sharing information, talking with each other, understanding, so that they can design the best tax plan. They can, write up a will that's intentional and do it in a way instead of working in silos, because that creates a mess as well for a lot of our clients. Is when the lawyer does their strategy, the accountant does their strategy, the financial advisor does but nothing is harmonized and nothing is integrated. And that creates a bigger mess than you can imagine.
And that's why you and I hit it off so well right off the get-go, because that is the basis of the MBA Way, is about working with the other advisors, working with the lawyer, the financial advisor, the banker, the insurance person. Everybody needs to be working together with the same blueprint, because I was just saying before we started, I was like 36 years in the accounting profession. That's how long I've been doing it. It's 36 years. And that has been the number one pain point, is that I would see something and go, why does your will look like this? Oh, we went into the lawyer and we got the will done. And I'm like, for fuck's sakes, like, the lawyer didn't talk to me, didn't talk to the accountant, didn't talk to anybody. And now I have to go back and have this uncomfortable conversation with the lawyer and go, by the way, what you structured over there doesn't work with what we got over here, and we have to unwind the whole thing. And then the client's pissed off. So I started doing this forward planning, which is like, let's have the conversation ahead of time with everybody and go, are we working off the same page? Are we working off the same blueprint to make this work? It's interesting, because it's, again, coming back to the book in chapter 2, you say, understand your story and share it. This is the same thing you're talking about within the family, having here is the blueprint, here is the story, here is the why, and feeding it through a conversation. It's not a one and done. It's a continual conversation. It's like the difference between a picture and a movie. You want to keep talking with the family members so that they're all following the storyline and the blueprint, so that when the day comes that you do go, they know what's going on. They know how to take care of this. They know the reasons why, and everybody's on the same page in the family. Kind of like the financial or all the professional advisors are on the same page for the business owner.
So may I turn around and ask you a question, Eric?
Yeah.
Why do you suppose advisors are so reticent about working in that kind of fashion of collaboration? I'm just curious, because I scratch my head because I do it all the time and it's new to them. But why do you suppose?
Well, here's the biggest kicker on this one. It's the differentiation between the business model for your industry or your profession versus the accounting and the legal profession. Because the accounting and legal profession are all based on billable hours. So they're all like charging their 0.1 of an hour, and they're keeping their timesheet. The minute they step outside and start collaborating with you, oh crap, now I have to somehow tell the client I'm going to charge them for all this time I had the conversation with Sandy. And that's where that's where there's a big blocker. And so that's why we changed the model. I changed the model. Oh my gosh, that was a long time ago for my first accounting or my second accounting practice. We're coming up on 18 years ago when I changed the model and said, I'm not going to do this billable hour anymore. Clients pay me a subscription-based monthly amount. And so I wanted to have a conversation with you, and I didn't even there was no barriers anymore to the billable hour. So then I could have the conversation with you. You're wide open because you get compensated in a different structure. Your structuring is compensated differently, or I don't even know if you do the planning around it, but the accountants and the lawyers have a hard time having conversations with their clients about their billable hours. I know that's a major issue. So they've been very conditioned that way. But what I find is it's so destructive to the client because now the client doesn't have their team working together around the table. I know all the financial advisors, when I reached out to them to have a conversation, more than happy to have the conversation. I talked to a banker, more than happy to have a conversation. Insurance, no problem. Lawyers, no, I have to talk to the client first and see if they can authorize me to, go and talk to you, and because I'm going to be charging you every 0.6. That for me was a major blow.
It's challenging because we get paid, quite frankly, based on we have a program that we charge a fee for, and it's based on the complexity. And then the client can charge us, can call us any day, every day, once, and we are constantly monitoring it. We also get paid by implementation, whether it's through, the implementation of a financial solutions product or working alongside whoever their portfolio manager is. That's like a different model as well. But the key is that before we even enter that world of fees and compensation, we ask the client to unpack. And I think that is really integral. We want to understand, what do they want to accomplish and why, and what's the purpose. As soon as we have clarity on that, the rest is really easy because then we can design. Like sometimes this morning was a meeting with a client we've been working with. We've taken care of the estate planning through appropriate insurance strategies, have had family meetings, and now we're going to quarterly family meetings with Gen 2 and Gen 3. And this morning, I just found out that there's a Gen 4 in the oven, which is pretty exciting. So we're going into a fourth generation of planning for multiple generations, which means that we really have to help our clients clarify what it is that they want and put in processes so that there aren't expectations, but there are more agreements as to how they're going to manage this intergenerational wealth. And it's so exciting because they really do want this to extend beyond them, but in a way that's purposeful. And we're talking about a family that's not, that's very wealthy, but not necessarily showing that wealth, because they want to teach their children the whole idea of having a purposeful life. So I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about money and wealth. And hey, if you want to have a plane, you want to own a plane, God bless you. If that's your thing, if you're a shoe person, a cottage person, a private plane person, you've worked hard. And I think that we need to applaud the entrepreneurs that have taken risk. And we also have to somehow or another encourage those next generations to be stewards of wealth. But if they want to take risks, encourage them to. And that's through appropriate planning. And that's by planning in a way that doesn't leave a mess for those successive generations.
This is what I don't understand. I have always led with, okay, what do you want as a client? The client would come into me and I talk to him. I say, okay, first of all, let's talk about your life plan. So with the accountant success formula, I talk about the 4 planning pillars, and I talk to you about the 4 planning pillars and, the business, wealth, retirement, and estate. And we have that inside of MBA. We call it the MBA Way. It all starts with the client's life plan. What is their why? You and I resonate on the same page. It's like, I can't do my job as an accountant without understanding what you're trying to build or where you're going. But so many times, especially in the accounting profession, when you start in, you're just basically said, here, take the numbers, put them in the same boxes as last year, and make sure everything's perfect, correct, and right, and then move forward, and then tell the client what happened in the past. It's never about the future, which boggles my mind. The accounting profession is always about, let's talk about the past. I'm like, that's fine, but you can't do anything proactive unless you know where they're going into the future. And don't understand why that isn't the first and foremost conversation that every accountant needs to have with their client right away from the get-go, because then the client can start articulating where they're going, and that becomes part of the fun for them. They start talking about their future. They get excited about the bigger, brighter future, and they're like, oh, this is where I want to go there. And now there's energy and it's positive, and people are like, okay, great. Well, let's structure it here, here, here. I'm going to get on the phone, talk to Sandy, make sure that your investments are going in through the right vehicles, and we're structuring this right. We'll talk to the lawyer, make sure that's dialed in. And now everybody's working on the same page because we know where you're going. Why do not more professionals do that? And I'm curious, what has been your experience working with accountants specifically not thinking that way? And how frustrating has it been for you?
So it's funny because last week I had lunch with 4 accountants. So that was my accounting week, and I had a lot of fun. So understand, Eric, I love working with accountants because first of all, when we talk about our processes and the work that we do, they appreciate the fact that I'm doing and my team are doing the heavy lifting for them because they don't have time. So a lot of these professionals, it's not just billable hours, it's that the tax system itself has created such complexity for the individual taxpayer that the accountant ends up being the messenger. And they don't really want to be the messenger. Sometimes they do want to be that person that sits on the right side of the table. But all of a sudden come February till April, there's this tsunami of forms that must be completed because there's deadlines, right? Whether it's April 15th, April 30th, or whenever your fiscal year end is, and it's 3 or 4 months after, like all of a sudden they've got these deadlines. And the deadlines aren't just for one client, they could be for many, and it can be very stressful for them. So when we talk about how can we lighten the load for them, they appreciate the fact that if they have a place where they can refer clients, recommend clients to have just a conversation, it makes their load a little lighter too. So with all respect to the accounting profession, they're somewhat caught in a system, and your way, the MBA way, gives them that escape route or that safety door that they can escape and totally change how they're practicing. But for the majority, they're still stuck in that system. So when I'm sitting down with these accountants, I'm the first one to say, I don't know. I take my ego and I gently, ever so gently, put it in my back pocket so that I can understand what's going on. And I think that as soon as professionals realize that the advisor that's coming to the planning table, whether it's me, 1, 2, 3, it's not about who's the smartest person. It's about how can we serve the client, and let's share our knowledge so that the water level goes up for everyone and not just for one individual, particularly one professional. So accounting, it's a tough grind. It's a really tough grind, and yet it's a system, a tax system that makes it even worse for everyone, for the citizen, for the professionals. And there could be a simpler way to do this, but then you might end up, I don't know, decimating an industry. I'm not sure, but it's really about having good faith of collaboration and wanting to listen and learn and share.
Yeah, well, we've applied the accountant success formula to MBA, and we've called it the MBA way, and that's broken free for us. We don't worry about any of that. We're always looking at the end why. We look at the 4 planning pillars. We work with financial advisors like yourself and lawyers and bankers and life insurance people to make sure that we're building the life that our clients actually want. And so we don't have that problem. At MBA, we don't have that problem, but I see it everywhere because I still consult with a bunch of accounting firms across North America, and they're suffering, and it's getting worse. The complexity is getting worse and worse. But here's the thing: I wanted to talk about the book here. That one of the things that I really loved about the book was that it's not one of these reads there. You're just reading through a whole bunch of stuff, and then you go, okay, this is one bunch of great information, and then it just kind of goes poof and disappears. You've actually got strategic action plans. You've actually got some checklists in here. You have some great visual some graphs, and not graphs per se, but visual interest where people can look at it and go, oh, simplifies my thinking around this, or there's something I can actually take, like an action plan from the book. And that's what I really liked about it, was it kind of walked you through, what the problem was, from the price of silence, and then walking you through talking openly about your story and sharing it with your family. and having a purpose behind it, but actually giving you action steps, like actual checklists in here. Because I find that we can all talk about it and it all makes sense, but until you actually have a system to do something, nothing happens. I like to say that, willpower actually doesn't work. Systems work, but willpower doesn't. So it's like, oh, I'm going to say this, I'm going to do this. Well, it doesn't happen unless you actually have a system. And I like how you had a system in here where it says, here's the checklist, go through this, or here's the action step to take from it. And I'm assuming your clients love that because you're walking them through kind of what to do next.
Yeah, because it's like tools, right? You can't build a house without tools. Yeah. Well, you can't build an estate plan that's meaningful, that has purpose, that is going to ensure family harmony without the proper tools. So the idea of having that at the end of each chapter, it's funny. I met someone who owns part owner of a chain of funeral homes. And he came to the office and he wanted some autographed copies. And he said, he looks at me in his ever so serious face with these big blue eyes. And he says, Sandy, I really liked your book. And I want you to know I completed every exercise at the end of each chapter. And I'm thinking in my head, he's probably the only human being that did this. But he said, it's been very useful for my business succession plan and so many other things. And I want to thank you. This was an easy read. So I agree with you, Eric. The tools are there. They're fun. I always put a little humor in there, some funny stories too. So, because I believe that, it's like, how am I going to deal with the fact that I don't want some other guy to whisk my wife away who I've left millions of dollars and all of a sudden take that over. And we talk about those things, so there's ways that you can deal with that. Really? There's ways. Yeah, we can put it in a trust. Well, tell me more about that. It's a bucket. So that jerk that kind of swoops in, you don't have to worry because he ain't getting that money. We're going to make sure that your wife gets the money and your kids get the money. Oh, okay, Sandy, let's do my wills now. All of a sudden, because all these ifs and all these other reasons. And so having a forum to kind of have fun with people's fears that are at the back of their heads and makes jokes. I was just at a Seinfeld performance the other day, and here's someone who can make so much fun out of daily things. Well, planning, we can certainly have a heyday on planning, right? With, oh, no, let's not talk about that. Let's, or we don't want to spoil the kids. Honey, you're already spoiling the kids. So let's talk about how to ensure that they don't mess up with what you're leaving them, and oh my God, I can tell you so many interesting stories where I've challenged clients in their thinking, and then we had a big laugh. Because you have to have levity when you're doing your planning as well. I think that's important to consider.
That's one thing I never have a problem with, is having a little bit of fun and excitement, as you've learned from being around me so far. Hey, so here's the interesting thing. I think we know this for a fact, that there is an actual big bubble coming here. We've got the baby boomers coming out of retirement. We're going to have a huge amount of wealth transfer and business transfers that are happening as a result of the baby boomers coming out of where we're going. This Don't Leave a Mess, I think the timing is absolutely perfect. But one of the things I want to leave with our business owners that are listening to this isn't something you do when you're thinking about retiring. This is something you do from the beginning. This is like a living, breathing document. This Don't Leave a Mess book, and having a conversation with Sandy, I would highly recommend that too, is something you do on a regular basis. It's a way of living as opposed to a one and done. It's like, comes back to the analogy I said about the movie versus the picture. Like this one thing I got from this book is this is a way of being as opposed to a one-time event and then it's done.
Can I jump in with one comment before we wrap up?
Please do.
This intergenerational wealth transfer, I've done a number of presentations on this, and it's estimated to be $68 trillion in North America. They take this big pie and they say, okay, this much is going to taxes. We're going to really scare the socks off you. This much is going to whatever. And then this much is going to your kids or your families or your loved ones. They're missing a really important section in that pie: estate litigation. And that is the why I wrote this book, Eric, is because if you go to any national, international law firm, you ask them, what is their growing department? it's estate litigation, because they're going to be churning the waters, hoping that there's one disgruntled beneficiary, because that's not fair, although I still don't understand what fair is, and I have 3 of our own children. But the idea is that that is a burgeoning industry, and that 68 trillion, a big chunk of that, is going to fund not taxes, but estate litigation. And unless someone has a love affair with lawyers and waiting years and years and years, you can have estates that are just $1 million and 600,000 goes into legal and court fees. Okay, then you got another 200 in taxes and you've left 200 to your kids. Like, does that really make sense? Does that resonate? Oh yeah, I love lawyers and I want to make sure that my estate gets tied up in court for many, many years and that my family is feuding and they don't talk to each other and they're destroyed. That's my gift. So when we talk about estate planning, it's not planning, it's thinking. And when is the best time to plant a tree, Eric?
50 years ago.
Thank you. And if not, let's start planting now. And that's what Don't Leave a Mess is about.
And that's a big problem here in BC. We have Wills Variation Act. I don't know, what do you have in Ontario? Do you have the same kind of legislation there?
Not yet. It's coming.
Oh, yeah, it's coming because, the government knows better what's fair than we do, right? So the BC government, we're left leaning over here in BC. So the government wants to control everything we're doing. That's a whole other podcast in itself, and I won't go down that rabbit hole quite yet. But it's Wills Variation. So for our clients listening to this, Wills Variation Act is a major, major issue here. And just what Sandy said, the big chunk of that 68 trillion is going to go to litigation on that. So the more you, first of all, have the right conversations, and that's what I love about this book is about this is something you can implement at home today right now. That's what I love about this book. It's got nothing to do with the tax and the technical and getting your team, there is a section in here about assembling the right team, which I totally agree with. But this is something that's actionable they can do right now, today, to start changing the way you're thinking and talking about your estate planning with your family so that everybody becomes on the same page. And that is the underlying foundation of Don't Leave a Mess.
Correct.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Where can they find your book, Sandy?
Well, we have a website, www.don'tleaveamess.ca, where there are articles. You can buy the book, organize if you want to have interviews or presentations. We are also available on Amazon in hard copy, soft copy, e-version. And for those listeners out there that don't like to read, we actually have an Audible version, and it's lots of fun. So I had one client who took a picture of his dashboard on his way to Florida saying, after I'd given him a copy of the book, he said, well, Sandy, I'm not a good reader, but I'm a really good listener. And he was on chapter 5 and he took a photo, made my day. So yes, we have all different versions and you can get that on Amazon as well. And I must say, Eric, this has been so much fun and a real delight just to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
This is awesome. Thank you so much, Sandy. There you go, everyone. Don'tleaveamess.ca. Go get your copy today. Thanks for being on the podcast, Sandy.
You are most welcome.
If you're a business owner or CPA who believes the accounting profession has let you down, then please reach out to us at www.mbacpa.ca so we can have a chat to see if we're a fit to work together. We're always looking forward to talking to you. See you next time.